Hello friends, welcome to the next DotVVM Virtual Conference 2022. My name is Tomáš Herceg. I'm one of the founders of the DotVVM project, an open source framework that helps you to build modern web applications with just HTML and C#. Today we have several sessions prepared for you. We have amazing lineup of speakers. Most of them are participating on the DotVVM project and actually implementing features in the DotVVM framework or in the DotVVM ecosystem. So I will just share a few news about what's new in DotVVM 4.0, which was released a few weeks ago. And then my colleague Maxim will be talking about Bootstrap 5 pack of controls which we are preparing for DotVVM. Then my colleague Milan will be talking about using static commands, JS directive, and other amazing features of DotVVM. And then I will be talking about some enhancements we have made in DotVVM Business Pack 4.0. And finally, last but not least, I will be sharing some pieces of what we are preparing for DotVVM 5. There are two big features which are already in progress. One of them is DotVVM Dynamic Data, which allows you to generate user interface based on your data model. So you model the database and parts of UI are generated automatically based on the data annotations. And also I will be showing a demo how to run DotVVM applications within a MAUI app, which helps you to build multi-platform web applications and host them in a native window, or it allows you to create very interesting combinations of desktop applications and web applications in one process. So that's the agenda for today, and we will be also here with you tomorrow, where my colleague Andrei will be talking about Roslyn analyzers, which are new in DotVVM 4.0, and also he will share some news about what new API you can use in data binding expressions, and also he will be talking about validation and how we plan to enhance validation in DotVVM 5. Then another developer on the DotVVM team, Standa, he will be talking about React components and how you can embed and host these components in DotVVM. And then our DotVVM developer advocate, Daniel Gomez, he will be talking about JS directive and he will show some very cool demos about using ML.NET library. And finally, I will just say goodbye and thank you and share some plans for the next events where you can meet the DotVVM team. So if you are new to DotVVM and you haven't seen a lot of things about DotVVM, basically it's an open source framework which has two main goals. One of them is to help you build new web applications using model view model approach. So if you are used to use MVVM in WPF apps or in Xamarin, then you will find this approach to be very easy to use, very familiar, and you can start building web apps right away. And if you have some old, for example, ASP.NET Web Forms applications that you need to maintain or extend, DotVVM is one of the ways that can help you to get these applications to .NET 6. Basically, if you have never seen DotVVM, it's an open source framework. It's developed on GitHub. We are members of .NET Foundation, and DotVVM supports both new ASP.NET Core platform as well as old ASP.NET. So that's one of the key advantages of DotVVM. If you decide to use it, you can also install it into old ASP.NET projects, and also you can build the newest applications on the newest version of ASP.NET Core. DotVVM also has an extension for Visual Studio. So when you install this extension, you can just select File, New Project, and .vvm, and the Visual Studio will help you to start, and it will create a new project with .vvm packages installed. So that's very easy. And how the MVVM approach looks like in DotVVM, basically you have two parts. First is the view, which is a file with an extension .html. Basically, it's HTML with few syntax extensions. There are some data binding, expression syntax, and you can use custom components. And the second part of every page is the C# class, a view model, which represents the state of the user interface and also handles all commands from the user. So if the user clicks a button, some method in the view model will be called and you can do whatever you like. Therefore, you can use .vvm without knowing JavaScript. Of course, if you are a web developer and you know JavaScript and want to use it, it's perfect because you will achieve much more with this. But on the other hand, if you are just beginning on the web, it's very nice that you can only know HTML and C# and be able to write full-featured web applications. .vvm also ships with several built-in components. There is about 30 components in the framework, from the simplest ones to the most advanced ones, for example, grid view. So if you need to create an easy-to-use web interface over the database, it's very easy with the grid view or repeater component. And .vvm is seamlessly integrated into ASP.NET ecosystem. So for every feature that Microsoft will add into new ASP.NET Core platform, .vvm can use this feature. So if they, for example, add the support for HTTP 3.0, then .vvm will be able to use it right away because it's not, .vvm is just a plugin to ASP.NET Core pipeline. And also, because it's just a middleware that you plug into the request pipeline, you can also use multiple different frameworks in the same app. So if your application needs to publish an API or if it's using SignalR, no problem, you can use all these technologies in the same project. So that makes it also quite easy. Another way or another thing where you can use and take benefits of .vvm is to modernize all legacy web applications. Some technologies in ASP.NET like web forms are not supported on the newest versions of .NET because it would be so difficult to port the platform without making too many breaking changes. So Microsoft decided to not continue with web forms. If you have web forms applications, you still can use this technology, but you need to stay on all .NET framework. And if your application in web forms, you still need to continue developing the application or you are doing maintenance, you need to implement new sections, new pages, then .vvm can really help you because you can install .vvm in this old .NET framework project and you can write new pages in .vvm. And if you compare .vvm with web forms, of course, the approach is much more modern. You have the MVVM, which makes the pages testable. So you can, for example, cover the pages with integration tests. And also the components in .vvm are much more developer friendly, so it's easier to do many things in .vvm than in web forms. So you can take benefit and build new pages easily, more easily than if you would continue using web forms. And also you can modernize this application because if you take ASPX pages one by one, you don't need to modernize all of them at the same time. You can just pick one and then the next week the second one and so on. And then you can just start replacing these ASPX pages with .vvm pages. And once you replace all of the pages, which can take weeks, it can take months, maybe years, then you will be able to convert your project to .NET 6 because .vvm is the same on old .NET and on new .NET. The syntax of the pages of the view models, it's without any changes, there are no differences. So once you get rid of all system.web dependencies and everything that is tied to web forms, then you can just update your CS proj and say, okay, I want to target .NET 6 and .vvm will be supported there. So this is an upgrade path for old applications. It's not easy, it's not a magic tool which you will just click next, finish, and boom, your application is converted, nothing like this. But on the other hand, it's a way that you can take and within a few weeks or few months, you will have your application upgraded to the newest version of .NET so you can take advantage of all the benefits the new versions of .NET bring to you. So how to start with DotVVM? If you didn't install DotVVM extension yet, you can just run Visual Studio, go to the extension manager window, search for DotVVM and install the extension. We support the latest versions of Visual Studio 2022 and 2019, so please make sure to update to the latest updates of Visual Studio, because sometimes Microsoft changes some internal APIs and the extension for Visual Studio is dependent on these APIs. So when a new version of Visual Studio appears, we publish a new version of the .vvm extension, so we try to be compatible with the latest updates of Visual Studio. So update your Visual Studio, go to Extension Manager and install the .vvm for Visual Studio, and then you can just use File, New Project and .vvm web application for .NET Core, and it will create you a new project on .NET 6 with the newest version of .vvm. So that's how to start. And now what you will see today, because this event is here because we had a release of .vvm 4.0 few weeks ago. It was a very huge effort the team made into this release. So we will be sharing and showing the newest features in .vvm framework. First, after this session and after a short break, my colleague will be talking about composite controls, a new way how you can build components in .vvm. And he will show you how we are using composite controls to build Bootstrap 5 support for .vvm. So in few weeks, we will be publishing a new product, Bootstrap 5 for .vvm, which you can just install to your project and use very simple syntax to get advantage of all Bootstrap CSS widgets. Also, .vvm 4.0 can integrate third-party controls easily in .vvm applications. So you can, for example, take a React component and you can just use it in a .vvm page. Sometimes you need to write a tiny little wrapper over the component, but it's very easy. Basically, it's just a way how to pass information from .vvm view model to the component and how to respond when something changes in the component. So it's not difficult to write this wrapper, and thanks to this you can host any React component in .vvm. Also, .vvm 4.0 contains several changes and improvements in validation framework. Basically, we were just preparing the ground for enhancing validation in the next version of .vvm 5. So tomorrow you will see my colleague talking about this. Also, we have implemented Roslyn analyzers, which help you find out common mistakes in .vvm view models, because not everything is supported in the C# view model classes. There are some types you shouldn't use because they don't behave very well when they are transferred to the client. So these Roslyn analyzers will tell you if you are doing something which is probably not right and which will probably not work on the client. And also, .vvm 4.0 supports several new types and new methods in the view models, so my colleague will also be talking about this. And also, we'd like to share with you our plans for .vvm 5.0. So we will be talking a bit about .vvm dynamic data and how we are evolving this library, because it's not entirely new. It was here for several versions of .vvm, but the new version, which will probably have another name, will be quite different from the original version, and it should be much faster and much more powerful. So that's what I'm really looking forward to. And also, as I mentioned, you will be able to integrate .vvm apps into MAUI apps. So you will see a demo how my .vvm app runs in a desktop application, and the desktop application can communicate with this MAUI application, with this .vvm application. Okay, so this is enough for the intro. After a short break, my colleague will be here and talking about composite controls and Bootstrap 5, so stay tuned. And if you have any questions, just write them in the chat. We will be watching the discussion and we will be answering the questions in the chat when we're not speaking. So see you after the break.